and let's get into this mindset shift that could save your financial future. Now, what I want to say is, have you ever hadn't gone through a situation where you got a new job, maybe you got a raise, and now you're going out for dinners a little bit more expensive dinners. You got yourself a new cell phone, maybe even upgraded your car. Well, this is kind of the things that go into lifestyle creep. And I want this meeting that we have today to be our most interactive. So I have a question that I want to put to our participants and Steph and Ray. And before we get into it, what is one expense that you now think is essential that you didn't have before? So I'm going to put that question in the chat. Respond in the chat group with your responses, and we'll get into it during our conversation. But as I now turn over to our resident guru, Ray, and the man who has a plan for everything, Ray, I want to get start off with you and get your opinion or your story on what does lifestyle creep mean to you?
Uh, Hey, thanks, man. Good morning, guys. Thanks for joining us this morning. We have these conversations once every month, and the three of us share our journeys and our experiences, and just sort of, give a lot of anecdotal insight into some of the mistakes we made and some of our successes. Um, I moved to Canada at 25 years old. I had never had a full-time job in my life until I got to Toronto, Canada. I went from high school to university and then here. So a lot of my life, my family took care of me. I had relatives in the US who sent, barrels of clothes back and I dressed well and stuff like that. When I got to Toronto, it was a wake-up call for me because the clothes I was wearing in Guyana, I couldn't afford to buy in Toronto. It was a huge culture shock. The expectation was different. So for me, it's more of the immigrant version of lifestyle creep, trying to and looking around in this big city with everybody moving past me in their well dressed outfits, and me trying to fit in, not to look like I was getting off a banana boat. And then to add to that, I had a couple of friends here, um, three very close friends who lived in Toronto. Two of them had came here just out of high school, and they went to university in Toronto, and they were way ahead of us. They graduated university. They'd already got the Supra and the 300ZX and that kind of stuff. And the other friend came from a relatively wealthy family in Toronto. So his journey had been funded by family money. Now I was in need of those two positions, but being around those guys, you start to feel, I don't want to say it, insecure, um, but you start to question, when will I get to this level? When will I get that 300ZX? When will I get the nice apartment, the nice condo? When will I be able to travel as frequently as them and that sort of stuff? So it really started me off with a bit of a psychological advantage. And I think I mentioned to you guys in one of our chats, when you migrate, and I can only speak from my experience, you come to these parts with two things in common. Everybody starts exactly the same place. We have no debt and no credit, right? How you navigate the next 5 years of your life in these parts, whether it's the UK or or um, or the US or Canada, or anywhere you migrate to any one of the so-called developing countries, determines how the rest of your life is going to play out. And that's been my experience. I guess if you are second and third generation Canadian, the same first 5 year formula applies to you because how you navigate out of the gate from high school and university will probably also determine what your future is going to look like and the spending habits that you develop um, very, very early in the game. And those spending habits can be detrimental. You're muted, Andrew.
Andrew. Yeah, feel free to jump in, Steph. This is, interactive. So go ahead and, share your opinion on lifestyle creep. Like I said, I shared a question in the chat group. We'd really enjoy your responses to that question because it helps us kind of trigger on what's really important to you guys when it comes down to lifestyle creep.
Yeah, I was reading the question, and maybe you could add more clarification on what you mean by an expense, because I think for everybody, expense can be different. Like maybe we should expand upon what do you mean by expense, because that can vary for everybody differently.
Okay. Well, I guess it was just intended to be an open question. So it could be a lifestyle expense,
Mhm.
could be an expense to your children, it could be expense, anything that is outflowing of your cash that you didn't have that you think is absolutely essential right now, but you didn't before, i.e., a lease on a car or a new cell phone plan. So expense could be, it is meant to be fluid, meant to be, open to everybody's interpretation of what that expense is. But, however, answer it however you thought.
Yeah, again, this is Stefan speaking, and to me personally, I think being a person that operates a business, a mortgage business, I think some of the expenses that was essential is to generate clients where it goes to marketing. But in personal, um, I think it would be um, maybe shelter, but that's essential. Um, I don't know. I quite don't know exactly what that would be for me.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
let's get your version of lifestyle
Mhm.
creep then.
Yeah, lifestyle creep for me is when your income is rising and then you are not able to, and then your expenses are rising as well. So it could be when, for instance, your income is increasing rapidly, as well as the lifestyle creeps where it could be a car, a home, restaurants, certain lifestyle, um, even the people you hang around with can influence your lifestyle creep. And particularly for me, growing up, I think lifestyle creep was very influential in what I've seen on a regular basis, which could be in media, because I'm 33 years old. So I grew up where, watching a lot of TV and spending a lot of time on the internet, seeing certain entertainers and people of status with the cars, the Bentleys, the lights and the flickering, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes most of the times, where these people come from, and how they got there. You just see the kind of the end final result. So for me, I think I naturally induced that in myself. And for me, the lifestyle creep was, luxury items, clothing, bags, shoes, you name it. And this happened among my 20s. Well, it was always innate in me, but when I had a part-time job, I started working, that's when it was accessible now. Instead of me looking and being enamored by it by a screen and thinking one day I'll have this item. And then once you have that job, you're now chasing that feeling, and that feeling is very fleeting, um, as you learn throughout your lifestyle creep journey. And then the credit cards start to come in. So when I was 20 years old, about to go to college, BMO hit me with a credit card, $1,000. Here you go. Probably in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, racked it up over the limit, paying interest. Um, and then it's a cycle. You start kind of going that hamster wheel. You're kind of applying for more credit cards, and then you're also chasing that feeling and that kind of status symbolism, whatever could be for anybody, with all the stuff that we just mentioned. Um, and for me, it's still a continuous journey till now where you have to ask yourself when you purchase something, will this put me in a financial rut, or it would put value to my life or my family or my future? Um, so that's, to me, is lifestyle creep.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think for me, the first thing I experienced was housing when I got to Canada. So when I got here, I lived on Lawrence Avenue. So for those of you who are from Toronto, 1577 Lawrence Avenue, huge apartment, inexpensive, and you can smell the food in the hallway so you walk into the building. And that was my reality coming from Guyana. Now, as a newcomer to the country, I should have stayed my butt right there for a while. But then as you start to navigate the city, you see better zip codes or postal codes, to use a complete Canadian context. And then you start seeing nicer apartments, low-rise brownstones that look more familiar to the environment that I came from in the Caribbean, or in Guyana, actually. So I wanted to move. So within 6 months, my rent went from $500 a month, all inclusive, to I think $1,200 a month, plus utilities. Right now, this is the '80s. You know what I mean? I got a basic job in a retail outlet, but it was a familiarity of being in a certain environment, that was important to me, and that move probably set me back about 5 years financially. Like I'm now spending, $600 more a month in rent, for a smaller apartment. When I lived in the one in Lawrence Avenue was probably about 1,000 square feet. The one I moved to was about probably 600, but really nice. I mean, you had beautiful hardwood. I was the first person to move into that apartment. You get a dishwasher, a built-in microwave, all the toys, nice courtyard. And it's that, as Steph said, it's that shiny stuff that catches your attention, right? So I was on the bus one day, minding my own business, and they passed and saw this building. The sign said for rent, and I called them, and I got a place. So I went from spending $500 a month to almost $1,200 a month plus utilities. Unit was air conditioned, so it was very, very comfortable. But there was no mentorship, no guidance, right? And as Stephen mentioned, you get a credit card, right? When you first come here, and again, I think from an immigrant's perspective, my experience is very different from you guys. I came in, I was 25 years old. You guys were all born here, we're both born here. I'm not sure what our audience's experience is. But yeah, I mean, there was no guidance, mentorship. You come and you open an account with Scotiabank or CIBC, and they hand you a credit card for $2,000. And I played soccer at the time, so the first thing I did was went down to the sports store and bought some soccer shoes and soccer socks. And anybody who plays the game knows. And in double quick time, I've got a $600 credit card debt and no way of paying it off. Then you go and buy a stereo system because you got to get your music. You're from the Caribbean, you got to get that bass in your house, right? You got to get that's your therapy. So you start to acquire things that you don't know how to pay it off, and there's no guidance in the whole process. But so it took me probably 25 years to get it right.
Mm.
My creep continued, and as I started to earn more money, I kept on creeping. You started, as you went from having one pair of shoes to having 20 pairs of shoes, and you start buying your shoes in different stores. You no longer go into, lower end budget discount stores. Going into higher end stores with fancy names and stuff like that. And the shopping malls here are built to entice you. And if pre-Sunday shopping, you walk through Yorkdale Mall on a Sunday and you walk past the Harry Rosen store and the Hugo Boss stores, and you stand there and you dream, when can I buy one of these sweaters, you know what I mean? But it goes on and on. But let's ask you, Andrew. I mean, you've been asking us these questions. Let's ask you, what has been your experience? What was your first experience with lifestyle creep? And then, if the audience has any input, like, join the conversation. We're not here to judge anybody. We're all in the same situation, more or less.
Yeah. So I think you guys have, covered a lot of the similar situations that I think a lot of our participants are going to go through, and including myself. My first, I'd probably say, defining lifestyle creep moment that I can remember that really, really took a financial hit for me was when I was getting into college. Coming out of high school, going into college, back then, they used to allow all the credit card companies into the college to set up a booth where you can now just sign up an application right off the bat. And like Stefan said, boom, you have your credit application approved, and you got money right there. Well, I signed up for all of them. I had a BMO, I had, Scotia, I had all the department cards, and the most stupidest one that I think I got was a People's card. Now, I don't know why I thought at 20 years old I needed a People's jewelry card, but I saw other kids have jewelry, so I know my parents weren't going to buy me no jewelry. So, like Stefan did, went to People's Jewelry, got me a chain, got me a ring, and I'll tell you what, that one credit card probably cost me 15 years of expenses of just trying to pay it off, right?
Oh
Along with
yeah.
all the other debt that I included, that I customed. So when I look back at that time, and even when I'm talking to my daughter and I'm talking about money and teaching her money mindsets, I was like, the one thing that you want to master early is debt. You want to be able to understand what it is, what it's used for, and really how it actually works and how it can hinder your life down the road, because that was my experience. Like Raymond said, I had no mentorship. Parents didn't jump in and say, what are you doing racking all this debt and all that stuff. So it carried with me until later on in life. And that was probably my first big hit of lifestyle creep.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. But and you mentioned something very important. I hope the listeners grasp that. It took 15 years of your life. So let that sink in for a second. That's what lifestyle creep does. It robs you of your future. And that's just one credit card, right? Probably
Hmm.
had a $1,500 limit. Now, throwing a car payment on a BMW that is 10 years old, you know, throwing an expensive condo that you can't afford to pay for, um, throwing trips that you're making on a credit card to the Caribbean and staying at all inclusives, but you're not paying for them cash. Throw all those things in the compulsive spending that many of us do, right? And then your change of where you shop, you might come to buying groceries, right? You know, you stop going to No Frills because they don't bag your groceries, so you start going to, a high-end supermarket where they bag your groceries and people tell you thank you very much when you leave. Um, all those things take a tremendous toll on your financial future. And the one thing I had to learn is that I'm robbing my family of their inheritance, right? There's this guy from Berkshire Hathaway. I his name eludes me right now. He said you only need one pair of shoes because you only got one pair of feet. You can't. When I see it, I smile, and he talks about somebody asked him if he owns a yacht, and he says, "No, I don't own a yacht. I have plenty of friends who own yachts. When I want to go on a yacht, I call one of my friends who own the yacht." You know what I mean? But I didn't get those nuggets until I was probably in my late 40s. And the sad thing was I've spent my entire life in Canada, my working life, working in the financial services sector, right? But that sector is probably the most pretentious
I'll agree
because
with that.
it's about a
Definitely.
lot of glamour. So if you work for, large banks, investment companies, everybody's coming in there with a fancy dark blue suit and they got a shiny car, Cadillac STS parked outside or a 7 Series BMW. And they're just spinning their wheels, right? So as a young person coming to that industry, you know, I I just sort of went in to that same modus operandi. You have to go out and buy yourself. You got to get a pinstripe suit and a dark blue suit and gray suit and a blue suit and the shirts. And you're in commission. You're writing your own paycheck every day, every single week. Um, but you are under the illusion that that is the way to create your brand and generate income, and it's a total lie. The clients don't care what you wear once you've had a shower and shave and a decent haircut, and they definitely don't care what kind of car you drive. It does not matter, right? They want to make sure that you know what you're talking about, that you're credible, you hold yourself to high ethical standards, and that you protect their assets. And I guess the same for any other profession. I mean, if you're a school teacher or whatever the case may be, you go from being a sub teacher to a full-time teacher, your income doubles. The principal in the board of education don't care whether you come to work in a Camry or a Lexus. It doesn't matter. Once you treat the chairman with a certain amount of respect and do what you're supposed to do is what really matters. And I think, for all of us, we need to reassess how we spend money. Um, our relationship. And you mentioned, Andrew, that your parents never got involved in you. So you got his People's Card. But for those who don't know, People's is a jewelry store in Canada. I think they went bankrupt a few years ago. I don't think they're still around. Yeah, they're still around. I
I
think
think
they're
they're
one
still
one of
around.
Ariana's.
I believe
Yeah,
so.
Mappins went bankrupt, but people are still around. They give you a credit card. But what Andrew didn't add to that conversation, his experience, that you have a deferred payment plan. So you buy this jewelry, and they give you 24 months to pay it off. So you get 24 months of zero interest, and then at the 24th month, the interest becomes what, 29%?
Yeah, it was
Or
28,
28?
29%.
Yeah. So that's the real killer. That's the real impact of having the experience of lifestyle creep.
But Ray, I want to switch gears for a second, real quickly.
Mm.
We've talked about it. We've kind of defined it, experiences. But what are some of the solutions that we can give our participants on that we've either done ourselves, or have advised clients to either notice the signs or stop it altogether or alter it? So, what are your thoughts on that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what the audience should take away from this is be honest and transparent with it, what the debts you're facing. And I think the first step you should is, simply write it down, pen and paper or a pen or on your computer, and just write down all the stuff, the debts outstanding and the amounts and when you want to have this paid off. And a lot of these debts, you can speak to the lender about having a payment plan because they don't want this to be indefinitely. They want this to be paid as well. So, and then look at your expense, like your lifestyle expenses. What do you eat out a lot, or um, you go on a lot of trips? Maybe it's a 2 years. Every 2 years, you go on a trip. Maybe go once a year. Just reevaluate the spending, the ins and outs. Look at the debits and credits in your bank statements. Your bank statements don't lie. It's not altered. That's real in and outs, right? So, I think
But Steph, let me
one,
ask you a
yeah,
question. What
yeah,
about
sure.
those? Because I've had that conversation with looking at the bank statements. But what
Hmm.
I've found is that a lot of people are skewed because they don't incorporate what they're living off of through credit. So if they just look at their bank statements, and let's just say you go to the grocery store and you put that groceries on your credit card,
Right.
it's not reflected in your bank statements. So I agree with you 100%. But
Mhm.
when people are looking at that, they have to look at
The credit statement.
everything, the
Yeah,
credit
their line of
statements too,
credit.
because
Yeah.
that's a creep right there too.
No, absolutely.
I think the key is an expense software. Um, I started using expense trackers back in the early 2000s. If you remember the Palm handheld devices, the Palm Treo, and those Palm things, they had a lot of software. Now, I think because I work for myself, I've done that for the last 30 years, it was important to track my expenses. Now, for people who have a regular 9 to 5, and I don't want to sound in any way condescending, um, they might not be as diligent tracking their expenses, but everyone needs to track their expenses. So I got this expense tracking software, and I got OCD, right? So everything got to go in. So if I put gas in my car, the expense went in. I went to McDonald's, get a combo seven. For those of you who don't know, combo seven is actually a fish sandwich. I mean, I don't eat meat, so I've eaten those combo sevens since I came to Canada. I got a combo seven that's like a 7.95 cost. It goes in. I go to the barber, cut my hair, $30. That goes in. So every single thing was tracked, and then it was synced to my computer, and I get into the spreadsheet. I go to a bar, have a drink, it goes in, and then you know, 1 year as I was doing my taxes, I was going through my expenses, and I had spent about $14,000 just on casual beer and food at bars and restaurants. $14,000. Now, if you know what the tax brackets are in Canada, you've got to earn about probably $23,000 before tax to net out 14,000. So I basically spent about 25 grand before tax dollars, just on casual. And that was just one item on that expense sheet. So I think for people who need to manage their spending, I think once you start to write it down, You see it every day, every week, every month, and you see, I've spent $5,000 on my credit card this month, and I've spent 2,000 on my debit card. All your expenses, or you reverse it, 2,000 my credit card, 5,000 my debit card, and I've spent, this much of my, whether it's my rent or my mortgage utilities. And at the end of the month, that number at the bottom is negative, and you haven't really saved a lot of money. Then you really need to reassess what you do. But I think what's also important is, as income increases, and for all of us, our income's going to increase over time. What you're making when you're 19 years old in your first job, or 25 years in your first, or what you're making in your 30s and 40s, is not the same, it's significantly more. The question we have to ask ourselves is, has our net worth increased at the same rate over the period of time that we've been earning income as our income has increased? So if your income is gone from $20,000 a year to $100,000 a year, that's a 500% increase, right? Where's your net worth, right? Your liquid and fixed assets that you have in relation to that increase in your income. And that's the real challenge we have, because we're spending all this money, but we're not creating anything. We are creating any value for ourselves or our future. So, as I said earlier, we're robbing ourselves and our children and our future generation of real wealth. You know what I mean? So we really have to reassess and find something to track it.
Yeah, I'm gonna move to the chat box quickly
Yeah,
because
go.
I've seen there's a few chats there, and I think Allison Peters responded to your question, Andrew, earlier. She said health insurance, and Allison, not putting you on the spot, if you can go in the chat or turn on your mic, can you elaborate more on that? Well, we'll love to hear your thoughts on that. And then Dr. Vibe, thank you, Dr. Vibe, for joining us. I agree with all you about not getting financial guidance when I was younger. I think he was referring to Warren Buffett, to the person working at Burton Hasher. Shola, I have a few instances of sporadic spending rather than lifestyle creep. And Christopher Lawrence, my lifestyle creep was buying Air Force Ones. Shoes were, I had every color and some. I can relate to this. And now I have outgrown all the shoes. Literally, if I were to do this all over again, I would buy and sell Air Force Ones. And then Dr. Vibe said gross first net. Yeah, so going back to Allison, if you wish to, you can elaborate what you mean by health insurance to Andrew's question earlier. That'd be great.
I don't think she's on. I
Oh,
think
she's
she
not.
dropped off actually. But
Well,
to come to the comment that Shola made between sporadic spending and lifestyle creep, Andrew, what is your take on that?
so sporadic spending rather than lifestyle creep. I think that
I think I'm a sporadic spender also. Because we had a discussion the other day. In the short time we're in right now,
no, you're not
grinding. I
sporadic.
didn't. I'm not sporadic.
No,
What am I?
you're
Intentional.
deliberate.
Did I get a
You're
black coach out? No, you guys want to start counseling me here? No, am I going like a lifestyle spending anonymous?
Well,
That's
you
what
know
we're
what?
doing here.
Okay, but I guess my question for Shola was those sporadic spendings, how large are they? Right? Like some people don't spend all year, but then, go on a large shopping spree or, spend large amounts of money at one time. So to kind of find out how much that sporadic spending is, or is it just small little nuggets here and there? Are those
Yeah, we
really
need to
part?
know whether it's like you're going to buy thousands of dollars worth of stuff at one point, just like impulsively because you had a bad week at work. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
that's
Because
emotional spending. That's
right,
a
and
yeah,
that goes into the psychological and
yeah,
social aspect of lifestyle creep. So really, I think when we look at it from our different perspectives of our professions and our lifestyles,
So
it
she said
boils
yes,
down to,
emotional spending.
yeah, at work, yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
And
I
we're
think
all there.
yeah,
We're all done it. We've all done it. Um, and you guys have made great points on the sense of, what to do. Stefan, you talked
yeah.
about, tracking your expenses.
Yeah, I think we should tackle on emotional spending. And this is the question to everybody, and feel free is because I think my dad alluded earlier that, and Shola too, you have a bad day at work or you received a bonus and then it triggers that, endorphins that, maybe I should go get that item I saw at, a luxury store like Holt Renview or whatever you spend your money on. I think we should kind of look into that further, and why we have these kind of these emotional attachments or emotional triggers, I should say, when it comes to, getting a bonus or feeling bad at work. Why do we resort to buying something? And it can be small. It could be buying like fast food because maybe someone doesn't eat fast food as often, and you want to enjoy McDonald's. What is that like? How do we control those triggers of emotional spending?
I think you need counseling. I think that's a case where it is because there's something else behind there that is pushing.
So you want us to spend money on counselors now?
No, counseling will come from even family and close friends. If then you have an emotional challenging experience, whether it's work or something personal, and you end up maxing out your credit card, or jumping on it all inclusive and spending thousands of dollars on a vacation. There's another cause, there's a cause factor there that has to be considered. So I think that person needs, and I think we're all guilty. Like as I said, all of us work for ourselves. So you've had great months and very bad months. And in those bad months or those bad experiences, when you lose a big deal, you had that check that's going to come in for thousands of dollars, and then the deal falls apart. What do? Right? We find something to console ourselves, and that usually involves spending money.
Mm-hmm.
So at the worst point of your life, when you just lost a major deal, instead of us stepping back and thinking, okay, let me try and put these two deals back together and make my income, we go out and spend money a lot of the times. It's a way of making us feel better about ourselves. You know what I mean? But let me ask you the question. Do you think there's any level of ego attached to the way we spend money? Do you think that, when you get compliments, the flattery, nice suit, nice tie, nice shoes, nice glasses, you know what I mean? When we first, back in the day, we used to go to Hakim Optical for our glasses, right? Remember Hakim Optical?
Yeah,
That's
I do
basic
Hakim
frames,
Optical.
2-for-1 frames. Now everybody's wearing designer lens. Everybody got Ray-Ban lens and Gucci lens and all that kind of stuff. You see the same crap out of those lens guys who makes the frame, but one frame costs $99, one frame costs $400, right? So is it part of our ego now that drives us, right? Man, you look good, nice suit, nice tie, nice shoes, nice car. Is that part of the trigger that keeps us down this path of no return? I know when I get a compliment, nice shoes, nice haircut, feel good. It pumps you up, right? Feels like you own the world. But is that detrimental to our journey? Is that ego massaging something that we should need to know? I don't need to know.
Well, I think the system and the consumers and the companies know that. They attack that ego part of everybody that wants to purchase anything, any type of merchandise, because like Steph said, we're searching for a feeling.
Yeah.
And whether that product be brand new or 20 years old, we like that feeling of new. So definitely ego. I would agree with, and Dr. Vibe says it, he says, I agree that ego plays a part. He also says, I think many of us need financial therapy. We are in a consumer society. So even though we know this, and even though we can have our eyes open and know what they're doing to us on Temu and Amazon Day and all these days to trigger.
Today is Prime Day, by the way, I think.
Yeah.
Today it was Prime Day.
Yeah.
So you get free
did you
shipment.
buy
So for
any,
those who
did you buy
want to
anything?
go shop, you can spend your time here at us and not go and shop today and save yourself some money.
Did you buy anything on Prime Day?
Should I answer that question publicly or privately? I have to get some
Honestly,
stuff.
I think you just
Honestly,
did.
I had to get some outdoor solar lights and some garage hooks. But I think those were items of necessity. And that's the other thing. What is one person's necessity is another person's luxury. So this is a very deep, this is like we got like a 3-part series in this stuff. Like we only got like 10 minutes left, right? But that's interesting, right? I think they're necessity items, right?
well,
You may think that just put the stuff in your garage. You don't need to hang it up on any hooks.
right. But
You know what I
you
mean?
need to hang it up in your garage. So you thought,
But
I
I got,
need this for
but
my garage.
I have OCD. It got to hang neatly in line and all that kind of stuff, and right height and that kind of stuff. I mean, Steph can tell you that, right? So, then you get to the point now, necessity versus luxury or just a waste of money,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I think we have a comment with Christopher again. I think we should touch on it. The rebuttal that gets me versus the need or want psychology is we live life once.
YOLO.
Yeah, and then I swipe the card at times. Sometimes, though, we should treat ourselves, but in reason or in moderation, in my opinion.
So here's my thing about that. And I agree with we have to live life and we should feel happy and good for the most parts out during the day. But in respect to just conversation here is okay, if that dollar is going out, whether it be actual dollars or on credit, just taking that moment of asking, what does this dollar mean that's not going to be there for my future? Which has kind of helped me put a pause on some of the lifestyle creep that has shown up. Like I'll see shoes. I was like, new pair of white shoes to go to the gym. Do I need a new pair of white shoes to go to the gym? No, I have 4 other pairs of white shoes. But just that pause alone allows me to say, okay, well, let me save that 150 and put it in my TFSA. But yeah, I think Dr. Vibe have his hands up, so I think Dr. Vibe wants to go
But
off.
that's being responsible, and you work in the financial services sector. I mean, all of three of us do. So we see people's incomes and credit profiles and their net worth statement. But if you didn't work in that space, would you have the same level of discipline when it comes to spending that $150 on another pair of sneakers?
Again, that goes to the type of individual. I was always a penny pincher. I kept all my pennies and my quarters in my piggy bank, and I was the one kid counting them downstairs. So I would like to think that that would carry over, but who knows?
You see, having worked myself for almost 30 years, I had a bad habit of spending future earnings. Let me explain what that means to people in the audience. So I was a mortgage broker for all this time. I did pretty well. So if I've got 20 deals in my pipeline, I know what my income is going to be in November, right? So I started to spend money that I hadn't earned as yet.
Mm.
That is a sure way to financial disaster because anything happens, then you're screwed. And I'll give you an experience. 2008, right? I had a pipeline of probably 30 or 40 new construction transactions. And 2008 happened. And the market fell out to the real estate across North America. And property values dropped by about 40%. And all the new construction deals that I was doing, all of them fell apart, right? I'm not going to give you the number of commission or of earned income, but my income dropped by about 7% that year. Now think of spending your future earnings, right? That is a different level of irresponsibility. And that's what I
Right.
said. That's what I said earlier. I didn't I didn't really get the memo until I was in my 40s. So, and that was the memo I got 2008. It was a wake up call for me. And I was doing another transaction at the same time, a huge business transaction that fell apart, where myself and my associate lost a tremendous amount of money. So not only did the market fall apart, where my commissions evaporated, but I also lost money in another. And from that point, I really started to analyze how I spent money. Um, I changed a lot of things. I mean, like, even buying lunch, I would carry lunch to the office. Or got to get a fridge for the office and just have lunch in the office as opposed to going out and stuff like that. But I think for most of us, there is some sort of traumatic experience that usually wakes us up when it comes to how we spend money. Because a lot of us haven't had a great money experience. And coming from, I mean, you guys were here, so you guys were credit card. Coming from the Caribbean, when I grew up in the 70s, I had anybody on a credit card or a mortgage or anything, right? So people never spoke about that stuff, right? They never spoke about how to manage your credit cards, how to budget. You just go and buy what you want and just live your life.
So
And
yeah,
then
we got some good interaction with the participants. I think Dr. Vibe wants to get
yeah,
going, and we got some things in the chats.
what's on, right? What's going on?
Everything's going on. Appreciate the conversation and always good to see all three of you. I do believe this is a 3-part conversation minimum.
Agree.
Minimum. One of the things also, I don't know how many people here were taught to think long term. I think that has a really big impact on
I don't think none of us were.
that's and that's what I'm saying there, because my dad, great saver, to the point I know growing up in his house, he would put a sign, turn off the light when you leave the room. Right? That's how he said turn, like when you leave the room. Now he was a great saver, but he never taught me that.
Right.
Right? He just, this himself.
But should you learn by osmosis, though, Dr. White?
No, I think it did the opposite. It probably created more fear because now you take on like I don't want to. I think it does the opposite to some people like that because I kind of because like you grow up and you become an adult and then you're so that sheltering because it kind of creates a sheltering kind of impact on you. Now you turn on the lights and then there's a fear, right? I don't know. I'm just
No, I agree because my
yeah,
dad would come home and say, "Yo,
yeah.
every light on this house is on."
Yeah, no, I know.
I get upset,
No, and
right?
it does the reverse to you, right? Because you become an adult and then you have the light on
you're
and
so
then
sheltered. You want to say,
yeah,
I want
yeah,
to live it, right?
yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
and sometimes, again, depending on the relationship you have with your parents, you don't want to ask them about money,
You can't.
Yeah,
right?
that's a very valid point, actually. See, I wasn't raised by my parents. I mean, my mom was around, but my grandparents were my primary caregivers and raised me. So it was easy for me to speak to my grandparents and my mom. My mom never had a money concept. My mom has no money management skills, like zero, right? Very educated, well traveled, no money management skills, right? Like right now, she's actually in the UK with my sister, and we were asking her, like, she left her home in Grenada for like the last 5 months, and we asked her, like, how do you pay your utilities down there while you're gone? And she has no clue. So she might go back to Grenada whenever she goes back and find that her utilities being cut off for the last 4 months. Right. So I got my money management insights from my grandfather, who was way ahead of his time. I mean, he had um, life insurance and investment portfolios and bought stock and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a bit of an anomaly. But my bad habits happened when I got off of that plane in Toronto back in the 80s, because those bright lights, I came from, Ghana is a country, Georgia, a big city, but you can't compare coming from the Caribbean in the 80s to landing in Toronto.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
shopping centers and store, like the variety. You go into Foot Locker, and you got 10,000 square feet of sneakers and soccer shoes. The choices. So the choice now, all this choice destroys you, right? So it was overwhelming for me coming here, and as I said, it took me 20 plus years to figure it out. You know what I mean? 20 plus years was a long time. So if I think, every once a week, Steph, Andrew, and I have a conversation. Outside of this conversation, we have our regular chats and we speak, father, son, friend. I tell, it's like, big brother, little brother, and son. You know what I mean? We have some very, very kind of conversations. And, we're probably going to share some of those little nuggets every now and then. But in those conversations, they're unscripted. I mean, this is unscripted also. But we share a lot of insight, and I share a lot of my mistakes, financial mistakes with them.
Sorry, sidebar quickly. I think Christopher had his hand up. Christopher, you still have a question for us?
It's just more of not a question, but just like
Yeah.
an observation.
No,
Forgive me not coming on the camera. I'm having a bad beer
that's
day.
okay. Yeah, it's
So,
okay.
so I know Dr. Vibe's probably getting a kick out of what I just said.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
but sometimes I think back in time where you hear the thing, save your money, save your money, save your money, save your money. And then you would experience some folks who have saved their money. They'll buy a house, but then they're in their house in their bathrobes with no heat on. And in my head, I'm like, well, if you saved your money and you saved your money and you bought the house and it's winter outside and you're in the bathrobe, your heat shouldn't be off. It should be on. So then in my head, I'm saying to myself, yes, it's good to save money. But I also think to for your health, you got to spend the money too. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but I just feel a lot of people who have that whole philosophy of saving money, are they really living life? I
Mm.
don't know. I don't know. So it's
Uh,
an observation and a question at the
Yeah,
same time.
no,
yeah,
it was a great observation and a question. I think it relates to balance. You can be a quote unquote frugal person and enjoy life. I could speak this from experience with my own wife and her parents. Like they live a very frugal life, but they go travel around the world and experience things. I think, there's a balance when it comes to everything. There's a give and take. You can't go full force into saving and to the point where, you have no heat in the house. I think that's insane. Um, so I think there's ultimately a balance when it comes to spending and saving, and also alignment where you have a certain mindset where you saving money, but it's also you have to enjoy it as well when it comes to your health or or spoiling your family or yourself, and more importantly. So I think it just boils down to balance of those two things.
that's a good answer, Steph. That is so true. Um, I think we all have that one thing that we do that we enjoy that could be an expensive undertaking. I mean, like I'm into photography, and I'm talking using a regular camera. So you've got lens, and everything you get a lens, you want another lens. You know what I mean? And you want to start as you get better at photography, then you want to get better lenses to do better things or more exciting things. And if you look at the price of certain types of lens, I mean they cost hundreds and thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? And some of them you only use them one time. And the other thing is cars. If you're a car person, right? You like that adrenaline rush of driving a nice car. You wanted horsepower, and you get bored of the car and you want another car in 3 years, and the car is one of the worst investments. That depreciates like a brick in water. You buy it today and a year later it's lost, a third of its value. You know, but I think balance is important. I mean, but I don't throw something here. I throw something here for the audience, right? Let's say you've got a health issue, right? You've got decent income, you've got the necessary insurance coverage, um, and you got a health issue. You went to the doctor and you got a health issue, and it's going to change your life significantly. It might reduce your lifespan, probably a few years. You're in your 50s or probably your 40s. At that point, what do you start to do? Do you continue to be frugal, or do you now start spending money to get all those experiences that you robbed yourself of before you got that that bit of news?
I want to step back for the situation you said. You have the right insurance in place?
Yeah. So I mean, if you have the insurance in place, if you pass away prematurely, well, not prematurely, you've got an issue. You're going to pass away. Um, you know, so your family is going to get an insurance policy, X amount of dollars, so take care of your outstanding debt, your mortgage, and that kind of stuff. So that's it. But no, do you still continue to penny pinch, for lack of a better word, or do you say, what, let me go out and do things by myself, some nice car, start traveling, go out to dinner more often, because I spent the last 25 years of my life just going to work, coming home, putting the TV on, watching the basketball game, watch the odd movie. A lot of folks live that way. They don't go, they don't go to the movies very often. They don't go out very often. They just go to work and come home. They're saving, but now you've got this bit of information that your life is being um, could change. How do you deal with it? You just throw caution to the wind and just live your life, or do you continue to live on that strict budget?
If you want my opinion, my short answer is live life. If I
Okay.
if you've done the planning, like, and that's why I touched on the insurance. If you had the critical illness, that would
Mhm.
give you that lump sum to either cover those costs or go get the treatment or take that trip. You have the life insurance, so knowing that your family is taken care of. To me, I think that's more about you getting the best out of of your life,
What's
right?
left? Yeah.
What's left,
Yeah.
right? In my opinion.
But man, this was a really good conversation. We're actually past the hour. We haven't even touched on the whole house buying and moving up to bigger houses and bigger mortgages and choking yourself in that mortgage debt. So
Mhm.
Dr. Vibe, I think, as you said, we got to do a part 2, 3, and the interaction in this conversation was amazing. Thanks to all of you guys for your comments and your contribution. We really appreciate it. This is what makes this conversation actually meaningful for us. I also went live on IG. I couldn't really interact with the others on IG. A whole lot because I was more focused on this conversation here. So my apologies to you guys on Instagram. Once I figure it out, I will have a better interaction with you folks on IG. But yeah, I mean, this has been a really good conversation. But I think we got to do. What do you guys say, Steph and Andrew? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we
Yeah,
should
the
do it.
whole house thing is one of the things, that the bigger house, like that conversation needs to be had because as mortgage professionals, we have seen, and Steph has seen, to the way that mortgage debt, you go from a 3-bedroom townhome to a 4-bedroom detached home, um, and that can really, really impact your future. And as I said earlier, for many people, that increase in income over your working lifetime, right? Your income may increase 500% over the course of your work life, but your net worth is not working the same way. So I got a comment to try to understand the pros and cons of investment property versus stock. It's a personal preference, I think. I mean, some people like investing in the stock market, some people like investing in real estate, some people do both. I think it's just a matter of finding what works best for you and what your comfort is. For me, I like driving by properties. I can't drive by the stock. I like to interact with the tenants and that kind of stuff. And the stock stuff to me,
I think
it's
what she said though is understanding the pros and cons,
the pros and
right?
cons. Yeah, yeah,
It's not about like, and I think that's key for what she's trying to make that decision more so than just
yeah,
preference. And that goes into research. But
yeah.
Steph, I know
Yeah, I
we're
think we.
past the hour.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
think we
passed those
are.
10 past 10.
Yeah,
So
and
guys, thank you so very much for
Raymond,
it,
Steph's doing the outro.
okay, guys. Dr. Vibe, you see what these guys are doing on this show, man. These two young guys here, man. These little boys.
Hey, Ray, they're putting us under manners.
This
Thank
man.
you,
Do your
everyone.
thing.
Yeah,
Do your
thank you,
thing.
everyone, for staying for an extended hour or so. Thank you for the questions, everybody who participated for the lifestyle creep. Feel free to subscribe to our pages, our social media pages. We're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, IG, whatever news social medias are spawning these days, but that's where we are. And the next month's conversation is August 13th, 10:15 a.m. Wednesday. Is about post-secondary prep by Sarah Klassen. Klassen, thank you.
Yeah.
And she is a strategist and advocate for UFT in Scarborough. So we look forward for next month's conversation. And tune in, and thank you everyone for joining us and investing your time with us. We look forward to seeing you guys again next month.
Thanks a
Thanks,
lot.
Shola, for all your interactions. Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thank you guys.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, Steph.
All right, bye.
Great job, Stefan, Andrew, and Survey. Great job. Great job.
Thanks for
Thank you,
joining,
Chris, for the
Dr. Vibe.
questions,
recording that.
thoughts, man.
Take care now, guys. Cheers.
Take care,
Yes.
guys.